Neck of the woods, Governor Greg Abbott on the horn. How you doing, sir?
I am doing fabulous. Great to visit with you again.
Where are you this morning?
Well, I actually still am in Austin right now. I am about to get on an airplane and go to the Rio Grande Valley to McAllen, Texas, and then head up to Dallas.
Yeah, you've got something like lunchtime at Pecan Lodge, one of the great barbecue places of all time out in Deep Ellum.
And that is tomorrow. It's going to be slightly after lunch at 2 o'clock at the Pecan Lodge, where we are talking about things going on in Austin, Texas.
Well, that is cool. Let's talk about stuff going down to the border, because you're going down there today, but also fresh back from some talks with Mexican officials. What were you all talking about?
You know, it's very interesting because it seemed like the way that the newspapers in the state of Texas came out and talked about the issue of how Mexico would react to my going down to visit their leaders would be one of a castigation, of criticism for the way that Texas has beefed up its border security. As you and your audience know, Texas is investing almost $1 billion to do a better job of securing our border, because we are tired of the illegal immigration, as well as the cartels that are driving the illegal immigration. And so when I get down there, you know, I'm braced for this tidal wave of criticism that the media says I'm going to be getting. I was shocked. Well, because in every single meeting that I was in, ranging from the president of Mexico to the Secretary of State of Mexico to the head of immigration of Mexico, and the list goes on and on and on, they are the ones who brought up immigration. They're the ones who said that a better job must be done to stop the flow of immigration. They are the ones who pointed out in great exhaustive detail about what they are doing. And frankly, I came away thinking, you know what? Mexico is doing a better job than the United States of America.
That's exactly where I was headed, because here's a beautiful picture of you and President Enrique Peña Nieto at the presidential palace, and I'm sitting there thinking, all right, and I've heard some of the news coming out of your meetings, and it sounds like they are not particularly hostile to some of the American desire for border security. So that leaves only two things that are a problem to me here, and that's American Democrats and American Republicans unwilling to get tough on borders.
Well, you're exactly right, and that's one thing that you've seen surface in the presidential campaign, and that is that there's this sudden, seemingly out of nowhere realization that immigration does matter, the border security does matter, and the fact is this has been bubbling up for decades, and people are sick and tired of what is going on. But let me add on this one factor, and that is, let me explain why Mexico is taking this stance. And it's because of what is really driving most of the illegal immigration, and that is the cartels. And Mexico is as plagued, if not more plagued, by the cartels than the United States and Texas are. And they realize that they are being held back economically, developmentally, and other things because of the cartel activity. And so they want to do all they can to stop those cartels. And that is a place where the U.S. and certainly Texas can and will work with Mexico on, and that is to do everything we can to diminish the cartel activity in both countries.
You mentioned the presidential race, and you've not come out and done a lot of endorsing, and I don't expect you will, but you did have a tweet a few days ago throwing out some love for our Senator Ted Cruz and Donald Trump for their joint rally against the Iran deal.
Well, that is in furtherance of a position that I have taken. I wrote a letter to Congress talking about the absolute necessity and this was before the vote, of blocking the Iran deal, and explaining how Texas, once again, will be in the vanguard, because if that Iran deal does go through, then Texas will still continue its efforts to try to ensure that no Texas taxpayer dollar is invested in anything involving Iran, and we will be urging the private sector in Texas to ensure that they do not invest in any kind of investment connected with Iran. And so we are not giving up this fight, because this is an existential threat to the United States of America, to freedom in this world. And why we are engaging in a deal with a country that says that Americans should be killed is beyond the pale, is beyond comprehension. why we'd even be doing this.
There are border issues and global issues that'll be on the table tonight for the debate. I assume you've blocked out a little viewing time for this. How does it all strike you? Feel free to weigh in to whatever extent you like on the just crazy wide open race so far.
It's fascinating, but let's go back in time. Let's go back 4 years ago. I think around September the 1st, 4 years ago, the leader of the pack was Michelle Bachmann. I think sometime after that there was someone else, and then about this time it was Rick Perry. And then it was Herman Cain, and then it was Newt Gingrich. And there was a guy named Rick Santorum that never went over 2% until the Iowa caucus itself, which I think he won.
He did win.
And so my point is, let's use a Dallas Cowboy analogy. Preseason is all that's been taking place so far. The regular season is beginning. The regular season may be as crazy as this first Dallas Cowboy game where they come back and win with 7 seconds left in the game. And there's going to be many ups and downs during the course of the regular season and then into the playoffs. And so I think that whatever happens, we don't know yet. It's going to be very different and very far-reaching from where we are. Tonight is one of the games. And tonight will be very interesting to see how the various candidates respond both to each other, but also as well as to the leaders in the race. And so I think we have a lot of game left to be played.
You mentioned Governor Perry, who had the oops moment 4 years ago and got blistered for it. You know him. I know him. He's a better candidate than that and was a better candidate this time. There ain't nothing the matter with your predecessor. Do you join me? I didn't know if he was going to be a front runner or top three or whatever, but doggone it, Governor. The marketplace was not friendly to him.
The marketplace was not friendly, and I can't figure out why not. We all know he was a great governor. We all know he was a proven conservative. We all know that he could get the job done in Washington like he did in Texas. We knew he had the prescription. Let me tell you this. We have had 2 decades in the history of the past century where GDP has not gone above 3%, and we are living in one of them right now. And the reason for it is very simple, and that's because of the heavy regulatory overlay imposed by Washington, D.C., and things like Obamacare, the EPA, and things like that, Dodd-Frank. Rick Perry understands that. He would have gone in there and dismembered those heavy-handed regulations, and he would have gotten our economy growing again. And so he had the prescription to fix America.
I'm so glad to talk to you because in the last few weeks I've been talking about the job of governor and the job of, let's say, attorney general, the gig you used to have. And it all goes to Kentucky and our clerk issue, Kim Davis, whose biblical view I share. But what a huge debate has come out over whether our individual faith rules the day in a government workplace. Let me frame it to you this way, because I empathize with Ms. Davis a lot, but it didn't strike me as her fight at the clerk's office. It struck me as something a governor could have done when this totally unconstitutional ruling came down from the Supreme Court. It struck me that a governor could have ordered the clerks to say, you know what? I'm drawing a line in the sand. I'm protecting my clerks from this unconstitutional ruling. I order my clerks not to issue same-sex marriage licenses because that is not the will of the people of our state. Why didn't any governors do that like you or anybody else? Was that just a bridge too far?
Well, ironically, Mark, that is exactly what I did. On the very day that the Supreme Court issued its decision, I issued an executive order providing 2 things. One is telling every state agency in the state of Texas and anybody who employs a state employee to protect the First Amendment religious liberty of those employees. And then secondly, ordering them to protect the First Amendment religious liberties of all businesses and individuals doing business with the state of Texas. This is on top of something that Texas has that Kentucky does not have, and that is the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. What that act does is it ensures and protects the religious liberties of everyone from being forced to participate in a marriage that violates their religious beliefs. And so we have belts and suspenders that protect Texans from being compromised the way that Kim Davis was. And Mark, let me just make this one last point, and that is that some people have gotten this whole situation all wrong. They say that there's this constitutional right that was fabricated by the United States Supreme Court. What they don't realize is that in the 7,500 words of the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights, not a single one of those words mentions marriage or the authority of the federal government to regulate marriage. What the Bill of Rights does contain, however, is a specific reference to religious freedom. And the protection of that religious freedom from government. And so what Texas has done through those two mechanisms I mentioned, plus the Pastor Protection Act, is to ensure that Texans' religious liberty is going to be protected.
Yeah, pastors and private sector folks, totally and completely. But once you get that government job, though, don't our individual views take a bit of a back seat, like the Muslim that doesn't want to inspect pork, the teetotaler that doesn't want to do the liquor license, the Quaker that doesn't want to do the gun license? It's like, hey, you work for the government. It ain't about you anymore.
Mark, let me ask you this question. Are religious tests allowed to be imposed on people who run for office?
Absolutely not.
And if that is the case, which it is, that means that no, a Christian does not have to abandon their religious faith when they assume an office.
Then what about the Christian who doesn't want to issue a marriage license for somebody getting married a second time?
And that is absolutely very simple for the hypothetical you just posed, or for the Kim Davis situation, because the law has been clear on this, and this is what even Kim Davis's lawyers have been arguing. And that is, you can both satisfy the religious belief of the political office holder, as well as whatever the law is, by the reasonable accommodation doctrine. Now, this is the doctrine that was applied in the Hobby Lobby case under the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. What happened there is Hobby Lobby said, wait, in the aftermath of the Obamacare law, they said, listen, for us, Hobby Lobby, we base our business on religion. And if we're going to be forced to provide abortion-inducing drugs, that violates our religious beliefs. And the Supreme Court came out and said, you know what, you're exactly right. You don't have to violate your religious beliefs in the United States of America. There's a reasonable accommodation that can otherwise take care of this. And it's that very same type of legal construct that applies to the Kim Davis situation.
Borders, Obamacare, marriage, even the Iran deal. Come have a chat with Governor Abbott. Everybody can come to this at gregabbott.com. I see an RSVP. Everybody can show up and see you tomorrow, correct?
Absolutely. Open door.
That is great. It is at Pecan Lodge. And by the way, make sure you eat. It is some of the finest barbecue in Texas. This is Pecan Lodge, 2702 Main Street. Go to gregabbott.com. There's the RSVP. I know a bunch of people will see you there tomorrow. We are honored to have you here today. Always a joy. And thank you so much for being with us, sir. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark.
Governor Greg Abbott, 866-660-5759. Okay.